Greetings. It is a joy to be with you in this virtual space. Our church community welcomes you whether you're a new or a longtime member. We especially want to welcome those of you who are here for the first time. If you would like to learn more about our community and its online offerings, please go to nsuc.org and sign up for our newsletter. There has never been a better time to get involved or to become a member of the North Shore Unitarian Church. We would love to get you connected. Let us now begin our worship with music.
Good morning. Today we honor Memorial Day and all of those who have served and fallen in past conflicts. In that spirit, I bring us together with some words from Nicole McKay. Let us hold a space for silence and memory as we try to make meaning of our history. To help us work for peace and justice today, let us gather to mourn and grieve with one another all our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. Let us gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. Let us gather.
And so we light our flame. This flame affirms the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
Hey everyone, just a quick heads up before we begin. Today's Time for All Ages, as you might have guessed, is about the Vietnam War. It's pretty tough to tell the story of a war in a way that juggles its complexity and weight with the constraints of a short piece that truly tries to be for all ages. Also, this is the product of my research into the Vietnam War in a place called the Friendship Village. I didn't experience the events of this time in person. As such, this is something that I might need to come back to in the future. If there is something from your lived experience that you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to reach out. They were plucked from farms and apartments, cul-de-sacs and barrios, some by choice, many because their number had spilled out of the rotating drum. Most were not much older than boys. They came to the strange land heavy, heavy with iron and brass, heavy with photos and notes from loved ones at home, heavy with fear, heavy with words from men in suits and uniforms, heavy with the simple desire to protect themselves and those closest to them. Years later, they would try to understand this place and its people, its smells and sounds. There were some happy moments with brothers, but many, many more moments of pain and suffering. It was a place of beauty and darkness, courage and confusion, heartlessness and questions. So many questions. It was a place that hurt bodies, wounded hearts, and trampled souls long after the dust had settled. It is a place where so many continue to suffer from chemicals and broken hearts. It is a place where the war isn't long ago, isn't far away, isn't a History Channel program, but lived today and likely into the future due to the effects of dioxin. And it is a place where some of those who were plucked long ago sometimes return, some to remember, some to live out their days in peace with neighbors trying to do likewise, some to try to make amends for a legacy of chemicals and suffering, all striving to heal and become one again. Thank you.
Nach Frankreich zogen zwei Grenadier, die waren in Russland gefangen. Und als sie kamen ins deutsche Quartier, sie ließen die Köpfe hangen. Da hörten sie beide die traurige Mär, dass Frankreich verloren gegangen. Besiegt und geschlagen das tapfere Heer und der Kaiser gefangen. Da weinten zusammen die Grenadier, voll ob der klaglichen Kunde. Der eine sprach, wie weh wird mir, wie brennt meine alte Wunde. Der andere sprach, das Lied ist aus, auch ich möchte mit dir sterben. Doch hab ich Weib und Kind zu Haus, die ohne mich verderben. Was schert mich Weib, was schert mich Kind? Ich trage weit besser Verlangen. Lass sie betteln gehen, wenn sie hungrig sind. Mein Kaiser, gefangen. Gewähr mir, Brüder, eine Bitt. wenn ich ihn sterben werde, so nimm meine Leiche nach Frankreich mit, begrab mich in Frankreichs Erde, das Ehrenkreuz ein roten Band, sollst du aufs Herz mir legen, die Flinte gib mir in die Hand, und geht mir unten entgegen, so will ich liegen und hören still, wie eine Schildwach im Grabe, bis ein sicherer Kanonengebrüll und während der Rose getrabe, dann reitet mein Kaiser vorüber mein Grab, wie Schwerter klirren und blitzen, wie Schwerter klirren und blitzen. Dann steig ich gewaffnet hervor aus dem Grab, den Kaiser zu schützen.
Carrie. My son Andy was off to college, and I was cleaning his closet when I came across a classic high school literature book that I'd heard about but never read, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I sat down on the floor to read and was carried away to a time and place years earlier. The Things They Carried opens with the heartbreak of a tormented soldier serving in the Vietnam War. Opening the book to the first page, I began to read. First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross carried letters from a girl named Martha. They were not love letters, but Lieutenant Cross was hoping, so he kept them folded in plastic at the bottom of his rucksack. In the late afternoon, he would unwrap the letters and spend the last hour of light pretending. More than anything, he wanted Martha to love him as he loved her. But the letters were mostly chatty, elusive on the matter of love. She never mentioned the war, except to say, "Jimmy, take care of yourself." They were signed Love Martha, but Lieutenant Cross understood that love was only a way of signing and did not mean what he sometimes pretended it meant. And the book continues on. Later that night, Lieutenant Cross sat at the bottom of his foxhole and wept. It went on for a long time. He was grieving for Martha and for himself because she belonged to another world which was not quite real, and because he realized she did not love him and never would. I sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor. I covered my face with my hands and I cried. For you see, I was Martha. I wandered down to our basement and I found the shoebox marked Valerie's letters. Inside were the tattered envelopes, pale robin egg blue, with Private John W. Sutton in the return address line. The first letter was postmarked June 14th, 1968. 1968. A year to remember. On April 4th, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Coast to coast, cities burned to the ground. The Vietnam War was raging. In June, Bobby Kennedy was shot, and I received a letter from a boy that I did not really know. I'd had one date with Johnny in the fall of 1967. Johnny was 18, just out of high school. I was 15. We'd gone to see the movie Bonnie and Clyde. He was jazzed by the violence. I was horrified. I never heard from him again. So I was surprised to see that letter arrive 8 months later. But I was curious about this newly enlisted soldier, and so we exchanged letters all that summer and into the fall. Private John Sutton wrote about basic training. They're adding a lot more stuff on jungle warfare, hand-to-hand combat, and chemical warfare. And they are teaching first aid for every imaginable wound. You know, 97% of us will be in Nam by next year, 3% will be killed, and 35% will be wounded. No, I did not know. And he told me about the things he carried in his training hikes. His full field pack, 35 pounds, his helmet and rifle, 11.5 pounds, and the 8 salt tablets he took every day. John wrote a 10-page letter about the never-ending rain, sloshy tents, wet fatigues, soaked socks and muddy boots, 12-mile hikes, pneumonia and sea rations, pussy draft dodgers, fighting for freedom for the Vietnamese who didn't understand why their lives were changing and their people were dying, about being a squad leader and dealing with a kid who had gone AWOL. I couldn't respond to his letters about the righteousness of the war. I just couldn't. I didn't know what to say. And so I said, John, take care of yourself. And yes, I signed my letters, Love Val. Didn't everyone? He wrote that he had been accepted into the officer candidate school and would graduate with a heart full of pride and the right to be called a man. And he sent his letters signed, Love Always, Johnny. I sent him handwritten excerpts from the anti-war classic, All Quiet on the Western Front, and poems by E.E. Cummings. It was obvious that I belonged to another world of summer pool parties, babysitting, and a return to high school classes in the fall. His last letter was postmarked September 4th. He would be coming home in a week, and he was looking forward to our date. We would go on a picnic along Slippery Rock Creek, his favorite spot in all the world. And then the letters stopped. Memory is a funny thing. I remember those summer months vividly, like they were yesterday, because I still carry those letters from 53 years ago, kept in a plastic Ziploc bag. But when the letters stopped, my memory stopped too. I don't know what happened to Private John William Vincent Sutton. I've searched for his name among the 57,939 engraved on a black granite wall in Washington, D.C. His name is not there.
North Shore Unitarian Church is a community that is grounded in love, guided by reason, committed to spiritual growth, and striving for justice. We accomplish this mission through the generous donations of our members and friends. And we are also pleased to be able to share our plate every week with worthy organizations. Please text your donation now using the instructions on screen. beloved companions, please join me in praying these words by Barbara J. Pescan. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names in thanksgiving and in anguish, bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow above graves far from home. Breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing, "No more, never again. Remember me." For the wounded ones and those who received them back, let there be someone ready when the memories come and the scars pull and the buried metal moves. And forgiveness for those of us who were not there, for our ignorance. And in us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises, let new leaves of protest grow in our stumps. Give us courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain. And with our bare hands, out of full hearts, and with all our intelligence, let us create the peace. Amen, and blessed be.
Priez pour paix, douce Vierge Marie, Reine des cieux et du monde maîtresse. Faites prier par votre courtoisie, saints et saintes, et prenez votre adresse vers votre Fils, recueillant sa hautesse. Qu'il lui plaise son peuple regarder que de son sang a voulu racheter de bout en guerre qui tout devoir de prière ne vous voyez lasser. Priez pour paix, priez pour paix, le vrai trésor de joie.
Good morning. I'm Roger Barron. During the Vietnam War, I served as the supply officer aboard the small destroyer escort USS Hoover. Although we spent several months in the Vietnam waters, our ship was never directly involved in combat. But each Memorial Day, I think of the shipmates who served with naval and marine units in country, many of whom paid the ultimate price. Today, I maintain contact with the Navy by serving as the volunteer director of the Unitarian Universalist Military Ministries at the Great Lakes Boot Camp. You may not know this, but NSUC is a key congregation. We offer weekly Unitarian Universalist worship to about 600 Navy recruits a year. Reverend Lucas and several NSUC members serve on the board of directors and as volunteer service leaders. It's been disrupted by COVID, but this week I received word from the chaplain that they're beginning the process of returning to live service. Please reach out to me if you want to know more about our ministry. Our reading today is from Boris Novak. It's called Decisions. Between two words, choose the quieter one. Between word and silence, choose listening. Between two books, choose the dustier one. Between the earth and the sky, choose a bird. Between two animals, choose the one who needs you more. Between two children, choose both. Between the lesser and the bigger evil, choose neither. Between hope and despair, choose hope. It will be harder to bear.
Kool-Aid, candy, and cigarettes. Dog tags, mosquito-repellent pocket knives. Steel helmets that weighed 5 pounds, including the inner lighting and camouflage cover. Standard fatigue jackets and trousers, and jungle boots that weighed 2.1 pounds. These were the things they carried. One carried letters from a young woman named Martha, and Valerie gave a wonderful reflection on that earlier in the service today. In the late afternoon, after a day's march, that soldier would dig his foxhole, wash his hands under a canteen, unwrap the letters from their plastic encasement, hold them with the tips of his fingers, and then spend the last hour of daylight pretending. Each carried a green plastic poncho that could be used as a raincoat or a ground sheet or a makeshift tent. And in April of that year, when one of the men was shot, the other soldiers used his poncho to wrap him up, then to carry him across the paddy, then to lift him into the chopper that took him away for a final time. Americans carry a lot to Memorial Day. For some, it is a day of grief and recollection of lost friends and family members. Many members of our congregation served in previous conflicts and personally know friends and family who have been lost. Others yearn for peace and use these hours to reflect on the folly of war. And still others celebrate valor and patriotism and America's greatness. And then there are some who don't carry many associations at all to this day. And I think that for those of us who come to this day carrying less, it is even more important to listen to the stories. I began my sermon today with an excerpt from Tim O'Brien's beautiful memoir, The Things They Carried. It chronicles his time in Vietnam. Mainly, it talks about the things that each soldier carried with them, the physical transient items, and also the intangible concerns and losses and hopes and questions. The senselessness of a flash of light in the middle of a dark field that kills a best friend who wrapped an item of his girlfriend's clothing around his own neck for good luck. The time that Tim O'Brien, the author, was shot by friendly fire. In the time that he shot and killed one of the Vietnamese fighters, a slim boy with arched eyebrows. Tim imagines him as an introvert who was good at math and never wanted to fight in the first place. Good shot, his commanding officer says over his shoulder, while Tim looks in disbelief at the body. A true war story, he says, doesn't make sense. A true war story doesn't have a moral, Tim O'Brien says. Peace stories may do that. When stories are told and retold in peacetime, meaning is often imposed upon them. They lead to a climax that celebrates or criticizes America's role and the meaning and place of war in society. But war stories themselves, the stories that take place on the battlefield, are often meandering and gritty and many times leave us with no closure. Like the time that Tim's regiment camped out in a field that had been used as a village toilet. They didn't realize it until it was too late to move and had to spend the night covered in sewage. What was the meaning in that? In that field, one of the soldiers briefly turns on a flashlight to see the photograph of his girlfriend, and suddenly the field lights up like the 4th of July, and the soldiers must fire while lying face down in the muck. One of them dies and sinks into the sludge. No meaning, no meaning. Now, another memoir that I read this week was When Heaven and Earth Change Places by Leli, Hayslip, and Jay Wertz. Leli also carries a lot in her tale. One of her first memories of the war is being recruited by the Viet Cong as a young girl. They press a black grenade with a bumpy outside into her little hands and tell her how to pull its pin. The guerrilla fighters declare that it is the duty of the Vietnamese to defend themselves against these outside invaders that are coming in. And so Leli carries an enormous sense of obligation and pride in being able to protect her country. And that first day, she goes home excited to announce to her parents that she is going to fight for Vietnam. They give her a look that she does not identify until many years later. They look at her as a child who has already become a casualty, a loss, a ghost. And yet participation was not optional for many families like hers, and so they do not discourage her from participating. When I line up her story with Tim O'Brien's, I see so many common threads. As Tim is graduating high school, his insides are roiling. He knows that he is about to be drafted, and he desperately does not want to participate and even flees to the Canadian border. He says that it is not courage that makes him come back, but rather cowardice. He cannot let down his family and friends in small town, even as he worries that recruitment is a death sentence. Like Leli's parents, he feels caught in the gears of a machine that will likely destroy him. It is a machine that will ultimately claim 58,000 Americans and 3.8 million Vietnamese citizens. It is a machine whose operators are at such removal that they may not see or know or hear the cries of the people whose limbs and lives are lost. We see this today with the conflict in Gaza. The leaders of Israel and Hamas wage war with each other, and yet it is the civilians who are maimed and killed. When we look back from the vantage of history, it is sometimes hard to imagine what rationale could have seemed worthy enough to provoke such suffering and destruction. Certainly with Vietnam, a reason as abstract as domino theory, the idea that American aggression is preventing the spread of communism now seems paltry and pale. We do ourselves a favor to remember also that the things soldiers carry cannot always be set down after the war. Yusef Komunyakaa, himself a veteran, wrote the poem Facing It. It captures the things carried by veterans amidst civilians who have no experience or memory of the conflict. Here is his poem. My black face fades, hiding inside the black granites. I said I wouldn't, damn it, no tears. I'm stone, I'm flesh. My clouded reflection eyes me like a bird of prey, the profile of night slanted against morning. I turn this way, and the stone lets me go. I turn that way, and I'm inside the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, again, depending on the light to make the difference. I go down the 58,022 names, half expecting to find my own in letters like smoke. I touch the name Andrew Johnson, and I see the booby trap's white flash. Names shimmer on a woman's blouse, but when she walks away, the names stay on the wall. Brushstrokes flash. A red bird's wings cutting across my stare. The sky, a plane in the sky. A white vet's image floats closer to me, and then his pale eyes look through mine. I'm a window. He's lost his right arm inside the stone. In the black mirror, a woman's trying to erase names. No, she's brushing a boy's hair. Stunning. I'm just haunted by this poem and by those final lines. A woman's trying to erase names. No, she's brushing a boy's hair. By linking these two things, brushing and erasing, the poet is making a point about how easy it is to forget. In that simple act of brushing that little boy's hair, the woman is making life go on as if there were no such thing as war, as if the war had never happened. She is attending to an everyday task and failing to see the memorial that is right in front of her. And in failing to attend to memory, perhaps she is preparing another young person, maybe this is her very own son, to fight and die in a future war, because its cost will not be remembered or thought of by her. We have to remember. Now, it's true that if we were not in Vietnam or in any other conflict, our best attempts at understanding will be imperfect. But we do well to listen to the stories, to try to expand the frame to include the lives lost and changed by war, to learn what it is that they carry and still carry. Kool-Aid, candy, cigarettes, dog tags, mosquito repellent, pocket knives, steel helmets with camouflage cover, standard fatigues and jungle boots, letters from family and friends, hopes for a different life, a poncho to wrap the dead, stories, lots of stories, only some of which make sense, a feeling of duty, a feeling of fear, 58,000 names of those killed on the American side and 3.8 million on the Vietnamese side. Images that cannot be dislodged from the mind even decades later. A man's face that vanishes into the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and a little boy too innocent to know about it. If we weren't there, what is it that we can remember and learn? What is it that we can teach each other and our children? How can we find ways to understand and to listen? As painful as it is to understand and to listen, as painful as it is to contemplate the things soldiers and civilians carried in those wars, I would submit that we need to, because it is in that opening of the eyes and the heart that we just may create a more humane way forward. And that is so much what our world needs in this hour. My spiritual companions, on this Memorial Day, may that be our prayer. If you found something of meaning here today, I invite you to share this link with your family and friends. We will also have coffee hour in just a moment. A couple of other things. We're going to have a town hall meeting today to discuss anything in the annual meeting packet that you may have questions about. The board will be leading that. And we will also be having an all-teams meeting to talk about planning for reopening. So if any of that's an appeal, the links are in your newsletter. But first, by way of closing, I leave us with some words from Boris Novak. Between two words, choose the quieter one. Between word and silence, choose listening. Between the earth and the sky, choose a bird. Between the lesser and the bigger evil, choose neither. Between hope and despair, choose hope. It will be harder to bear, but it will be worth it. May it be so, and amen.